I'm going to back up just a hair from where where I left off, I think on that second video that I sent, whatever day that was. Friday, I guess. On 1321. And the only reason I'm spending time on this page, this is Act 5, Scene 1, lines 1, 19, and following, is it's because this is where we find out how old Hamlet is. When we are first introduced to the play, we see Hamlet all the way from Act 1 up through the very beginning of Act 5. How old does this Hamlet come across as? How old do you think he is? Late teens, early 20s, maybe? Page 1321 in the 11th edition. And yet, Hamlet asks the gravedigger, line 119, how long hast thou been gravemaker? Of all the day in the year, it came to it that day that our last king, Hamlet, overcame Fortinbras. We've already talked about Hamlet Sr. overcoming Fortinbras Sr., and now we're told, this guy's been sexton, gravedigger, at the church from the time when Hamlet Sr. killed Fortinbras Sr. We're not told how long that is yet. So, Hamlet, well, how long's that? Can't you tell? Every fool can tell that. It was the very day young Hamlet was born. He that is mad and sent to England. And they go off about Hamlet being mad, why he was sent to England, etc., etc. So the first clown, the gravedigger, then says, several lines later, line 139, I have been sexton here, man and boy, 30 years. Tells us two things. Hamlet Sr. defeated Fortinbras Sr. 30 years ago. And yet Fortinbras Jr. is now, kind of feeling his oats, so to speak, and is on the war path, kind of, right? Not against Denmark or anything like that. He's the one that was marching into Poland and sought safe passage across Denmark and such, okay? Tells us Hamlet is 30 years old. That also means Fortinbras Jr. also has to be at least 30 years old. If his dad died 30 years previously, he couldn't have been born, much later than that, 9 months later than that, etc. So Hamlet's 30 years old, and he's a student at the university still. For some people, at least, that presents a problem. Why hasn't Hamlet done anything with his life, so to speak? Well, what should Hamlet be at this moment? He should be king. But Claudius took it. See, it's not like Hamlet is 15 years old and too young to have been king, and that's why Claudius took the position. No, Claudius usurped it, okay? So they keep talking, and the clown throws up a skull. And we get one of the most famous scenes in all of Shakespeare, okay? There's a poster at the end of the hallway that my office block is in, up against one of the walls. It's a poster from the 1960s. I've got one in same poster in my house at home, and it's of Hamlet, figure of Hamlet, holding the skull. And Hamlet holds the skull, and the clown told him whose it was. Yorick's, page 1322. And Hamlet says, alas, poor Yorick, I knew him, Horatio. Okay? The way that passage is usually given in popular culture and stuff, it has Hamlet say, alas, poor Yorick, I knew him well. He doesn't say that. He just says, I knew him. Yorick was the court jester. Okay? Yorick's been dead 23 years, we're going to find out. Okay? So Hamlet takes Yorick's skull and kind of uses it to launch into a meditation on life and death. Okay? So he's holding the skull, And he says, where are your lips? Where are your jokes? Where are blah, blah, blah? Okay? And then Hamlet asks Horatio, dost thou think Alexander looked like this in the earth? That is Alexander the Great, conqueror of the known world in the 4th century. Yeah, smelled. Yeah. To what bases we may return, Horatio? Base. 2 meanings. 1, base. Foundation, fundament. Okay? From dust thou art, and to dust shalt thou return, God tells Adam in Genesis. So, base uses back to the earth, and base, low, mean, common, ordinary. Okay? So what does he mean? He goes on. Why may not imagination trace the noble dust of Alexander till I find it stopping a bunghole? What's a bunghole? It's the hole in a cask, like a cask of beer or a cask of wine. And what you used to stop it with, we today would say a stopper or a cork, which is made out of cork. Hamlet uses the image of loam, clay. Horatio goes, that's going too far. Toward to consider too curiously, too finely. Hamlet, no, not a jot. And Hamlet does something here that he did earlier with talking about how a king can go through progress through the guts of a beggar. Okay? He says, no, follow him. And let's see how this works. Alexander died. Alexander was buried. Alexander returned to dust. The dust is earth. Of earth we make loam. And why of that loam whereto he was converted might they not stop a beer barrel? Well, what did he say earlier about, in talking with the king about Polonius, talking about how king can go through a progress through the guts of a beggar? Well, how? Because the king dies, the king is buried, a worm eats through the king's body, someone catches the worm, goes fishing, catches the fish, eats the fish, which is eaten of the worm, which is eaten of the king, and therefore the king goes through your guts. The image is very similar. What's his point? This is what life's about. Ending up is dirt. Okay? So, Hamlet sees the king and queen, Laertes, body of Ophelia. He doesn't know it's Ophelia. It's just a body. And others come in. And Laertes is talking with the priest. What ceremony else? And Hamlet says, that's Laertes. What ceremony else? That is, what else are you going to do, priest? What he's talking about is what ceremony at the gravesite. See, often in the church, Protestant, Catholic, Orthodox, etc., you have 2 services. You have the funeral done in a church or maybe in a, what's it called? Funeral home, okay? And then you have the burial service. Different prayers, etc., offered there. The priest says, her obsequies have been as far and large as we have warranty. That is, we've done all the mourning for her as we can by the canons of the church, by the laws or rules of the church. Her death was doubtful, meaning we don't know if she died, metaphorically speaking, in the church or outside of the church. In the church, accidentally, fell into the brook and drowned, or outside of the church, suicide. Did she drown herself? Because suicide was an unforgivable sin. Catholic Church taught, I don't think it still does today. A lot of Protestants no longer teach this. They did at the beginning, that Suicide automatically sends you to hell. You place yourself beyond God's mercy because you say, God, my problem is too big, not even you can solve it. Okay? So that's why he says, and but that great command oversways the order, she should in ground unsanctified have lodged till the last trumpet. The great command that oversways the order, the king has commanded that I give her a church burial of sorts. He says, no. For charitable prayers, shards, flints, and pebbles should be thrown on her. Charitable, merely out of love, not the full rites of the church. She should be buried not in the church cemetery, not in hallowed ground, but outside the church cemetery. And people who want to offer prayers for her should just say, Lord, be merciful to her, kind of a thing. Okay? Laertes, must there be no more done? No more. We should profane the service of the dead, to sing a requiem and such rest to her as to peace-parted souls. It would de-sanctify, okay, the prayers for the dead to do more for her. Why? Because she is not the same as to use the priest terms, a peace-parted soul. She did not, the priest is suggesting, die in peace. If you commit suicide, you're not at peace. Your soul is troubled. Also, she didn't receive the last rites. See, the last rites are supposed to be performed before you take your final breath. Okay? Didn't happen for her. Who else did last rites not happen for? No? Well, Polonius, yes. I thought you said Claudius. Hamlet Sr., which is why he is in purgatory, supposedly, during the day. It's why he has to fast in fires, etc., etc. Okay? So, Laertes says, lay her in the earth, and from her fair and unpolluted flesh may violet spring. You know, my sister will be a ministering angel when thou liest howling. You're going to rot and burn in hell, priest, while she will be a ministering angel of God. And Hamlet now understands who is being buried. What? The fair Ophelia? But it's not a question, it's an exclamation. He hasn't heard that Ophelia has died. So Laertes jumps into the grave with her. So her body's been lowered in, not in a casket. Okay? These are burials one on top of another. That's why they're digging up dead bodies. You know, they put her in, all wound up in a winding sheet. Laertes jumps down in with her, and the impression is almost that he grabs her corpse and hugs it. Okay, and says, bury me with her. Hamlet comes forward. What is he whose grief bears such an emphasis? Whose phrase of sorrow conjures the wandering stars and makes them stand like wonder-wounded hearers? This is I, Hamlet the Dane. This is I'm Hamlet the Dane. Notice he doesn't just come in and say, hey, y'all, I'm back. Why is it, this is I, Hamlet the Dane? He's asserting authority there. Prince. Right? Does he not know who Laertes is? Yes, he does know who Laertes is. But between what? The fair Ophelia and here, I'm going to suggest something has happened in Hamlet's mind. Laertes, because Hamlet jumps into the grave. And he says, this is I, Hamlet the Dane. Notice Laertes doesn't greet him. Laertes just, the devil take thy soul. And we're told, grappling with him. I don't think it should say grappling with him. Not sure that the stage directions come from Shakespeare. I don't believe they do. They're probably in the first folio, but we don't know if they're Shakespeare's actually. Because what do we hear Hamlet say next? He's not just grappling. Grappling is more like, two individuals in their, one hand got this hand here, my right hand to the other person's left hand, my left hand to the other person's right hand, and we're trying to get a grip. Laertes has a grip. Where is it? Thou prayest not well, prithee take thy hands from my throat. He's got Hamlet by the throat and is choking him. Okay? For though I am not splendid and rash, yet have I in me something dangerous, which let thy wisdom fear. Hold off thy hand. I'm not splenitive and rash, quick-tempered, Hamlet says. How do we know he's not quick-tempered and rash? Because it's Act 5, and he still hasn't avenged his father's death. If he'd been quick-tempered and rash, when would Hamlet have killed Claudius? Act 4. Now might I do it, pet. When Polonius was down there praying. But he didn't, okay? But he says, yet have I in me something dangerous, which let thy wisdom fear. What's the something in him dangerous? We've seen in the play several times up to this point where Hamlet has said, down, heart, peace, soul. And he's talked about his distracted globe. He's full of passion. He's full of anger and hatred. He wants to kill Claudius, but he hasn't acted yet. And it's like this is just bubbling up within him. Okay? So that's why he says, which let thy wisdom fear. In other words, don't push me, Laertes. Because if he blows, what's going to happen? He's going to really blow. The queen, Hamlet. So they separate Hamlet and Laertes. And Hamlet says, I will fight with him upon this theme until my eyelids will no longer wag. Now, we don't know what the theme is yet. He's going to explain it in just a moment in response to Gertrude's question. But what does he mean, until my eyelids will no longer wag?
Till I die.
Yeah. Till I am dead. I'll fight with Laertes. With doesn't mean alongside. It means against. I'll fight against him on this theme. What's the theme? I loved Ophelia. What did Laertes and Polonius tell him? He doesn't love you. He just wants to have sex. You're just a notch on the bedpost. I loved Ophelia. 40,000 brothers could not, with all their quantity of love, make up my sum. There could be 40,000 Laertes. It wouldn't even come close. Part of that's because what kind of love does a brother have for his sister? That should not be the same kind of love as a lover for a woman. The one's romantic and erotic, the other is filial, brotherly, familial love. What wilt thou do for her? What will you do, Laertes, for your sister, the king? He's mad, Laertes. He's crazy, don't. The queen, forbear him. That is, don't listen to him. Don't rise to his taunt. Hamlet, come on, show me what you'll do. Will you weep? Will you fight? Will you fast? Will you tear thyself? Will you drink up Isa? Will you eat I'll do it all. You come here to whine? To outface me with leaping in her grave? That is to show greater love than I have? Be buried, so will I. And if thou prate of mountains, let him throw millions of acres on us. I'll rant as well as thou. Queen, this is mere madness. Okay? Question. is it? Is this madness? And if it is, what kind of madness? Okay. Just let that hang there for a bit. Queen says, he'll be okay in a little bit. And Hamlet then says to Laertes, hear you, sir, what is the reason that you used me thus? Why did you attack me? That's the use me thus. I loved you ever. That implies, like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern were Hamlet's friends, Laertes was Hamlet's friend. Laertes, this is me, But it is no matter. Let Hercules himself do what he may. The cat will mew and the dog will have his... King, Horatio, wait upon Hamlet. Calm him down. And then he says to Laertes, strengthen your patience in our last night's speech. What was their last night's speech about? Anybody remember? It was their plot against Hamlet. See, the king had already received word from Hamlet that he was back and that he was coming to meet him. And the king and Laertes came up with the fencing idea. Well, have you challenged Hamlet to a fencing duel? And the king says, and I've got some poison here, and I'll put it in a cup for Hamlet to drink, and I'll poison him that way. So that he'll die, and nobody will be any the wiser. And Laertes says, and I've got some poison, and I'll put it on the tip of my foil, and I'll make sure the foil is unbaited. That is, the plastic or the rubber cap is off, so it has a point, and I'll stab him. So that we're sure he dies. That's what he's talking about. So strengthen your patience. Be patient a little bit longer until we do this game. Okay? So scene 2, Hamlet and Horatio come in, hall in the castle. And I think they're speaking as they come in. That is, before they enter, they've been in conversation. What are they talking about? Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Hamlet's trip to England. Partial trip to England. So, Hamlet says, in my heart there was a kind of fighting that would not let me sleep. Methought I lay worse than the mutines in the bilboes. Rashly, and praise be rashness for it, let us know, our indiscretion sometimes serves us well when our deep plots do pall. And that should learn us there's a divinity that shapes our ends, refuse them how we will. Okay? He says, something inside kept me from sleeping. And I thought, something's not right with this picture. Something's going to happen. And he tells us, rashly, and praise be rashness for it, let us know our indiscretion sometimes serves us well when our deep plots do pall. Pall there means fatal. So, our indiscretion sometimes serves us well. What's he mean by indiscretion? Rash action. Not thinking everything through. Not plotting everything out. And that should learn us, meaning that should teach us, there's a divinity that shapes our ends, rough hew them how we will. Talk about the second part first. How do we rough hew our ends? Our purposes in life, and the end, the consummation of our lives, with the choices and the actions we make. Right? Hamlet says, we rough hew our lives. What does that mean to rough hew? It's a term from carpentry. You fell a log, you chop a log down, and you get a broad axe, and you start to shape that log, which is round by nature. But you can't make a good log house or a good timber building if the log stays round. You square it. So you take pieces off of it. That is, you shape it roughly. You're not going to get it, unless you're a master craftsman, you're not going to get it perfectly square all the way down the length of it. Okay? So he says, we do that to our lives But divinity, God, shapes our ends. God works with us and our actions and decisions to do what? To open doors and close doors, to create opportunities and to close down opportunities. And he's taking all of that in connection with acting indiscreetly. Because it's the indiscreet actions that are part of that rough shaping. Okay? He's not only talking about his own ends, he's getting to talking about Rosencrantz and Guildenstern's end. So, Horatio says, yeah, that's true, I get that. So he says, I got up from my cabin and I went out to find them. And he fingered their packet, that is, he pickpocketed the packet that had the letters to the King of England. And he went back to where he was, to his own room, and he found their grand commission. He unsealed the letter, and he read what the king wrote to the King of England. Kill Hamlet. And so what did he do? He replaced that letter with another letter. Okay? He says, here's the commission. He gives Horatio the letter with the insignia of the king on it. So he says, I sat down and I wrote a new commission. He says, but how did you seal it? Line 47 or 48. How was the seal? Hamlet says, even in this, heaven was ordinate. Hamlet's kind of, he doesn't use the word, but he's implying this was all predestined. This is how God, shaped the end. I had in my purse my father's signet, that is a ring. Broke it this last year. I used to wear my ring that belonged to my grandfather, and it had an image like of a knight on it, kind of in profile, that you could use to seal hot wax with. So, if this were a letter, I would fold it in three, like that, dip wax in it, and then put the image of that ring onto it. And Hamlet says, I had my father's ring, King of Denmark. That's pretty much all that's needed. Okay? And he says, they never knew. So Rosencrantz and Guildenstern go to the commission of what is in Hamlet's letter. He said, why, man, they did make love to this employment. They wanted to do this. Hamlet's implying these two that he knew from schoolboy age, okay, he's 30, implication is they're 30 also. He's known them for at least 20 years. They knew what they were doing. They got what they had coming. They are not near my conscience. Their defeat does by their own insinuation grow. In other words, we think insinuate means to imply something. Hamlet says they insinuated themselves into this position. They placed themselves here. 'Tis dangerous when the baser nature comes between the past and fell incense points of mighty opposites. Little people shouldn't get involved in the affairs of big and great and mighty people. Right? Privates shouldn't get involved when generals argue. Because privates can be what? Just get rid of them. They're expendable. So, Horatio, what a king is this? And I think that's because Horatio has just finished reading the commission. He's like, oh my God, I can't believe this. Hamlet, does it not think thee stand me now upon? Don't you agree with me that, what? He that hath killed my king and whored my mother, he's turned my mother into a whore, popped in between the election and my hopes. What's the election? The election to the kingship. I've mentioned this before. In the Germanic custom, you had electors who elected the king. Really, that was pro forma. That was like what the vice president does on January 6th. What is the purpose? This is the sole reason for vice president. It's to open that letter and to read the final results of the College of Electors, the Electoral College. By the way, it's where the founders got it from, Germanic custom. Okay? What the electors did, however, the vast majority of times, is they approved the next in line, the eldest son. So the eldest son would be put up for election, and they would approve it. That's why Claudius gave that big long speech in Act 1, where he talks about how, we brought joy out of sorrow, etc., in marrying Gertrude and becoming king. And he thanks everybody for their approval. Okay? Hamlet is saying, I should have been elected. But Claudius put himself first. Throwing out his angle for my proper life, his angle, he went fishing for me. He tried to catch me. And with such cozenage, is it not perfect conscience to quit him with this arm? Aren't I right, Horatio, to want to kill him with this hand? What's he getting at? Revenge? That's not necessarily revenge there. Hamlet is kind of making a legal case for why Claudius must be stopped. He goes on. And is it not to be damned to let this canker of our nature come in further evil? So before he goes to that part, he says, he killed my father, he whored my mother, he is king in my place. It's like each of those is cause for his death by my arm. But then the last thing Hamlet adds, those are revenge. Okay, those are revenge. The last thing Hamlet adds is not revenge at all. He says, will I be damned? Or excuse me, wouldn't I be damned if I allowed Claudius to continue? To continue what? What are the last two words? Last three words, if you want, of his little speech there. In further evil. If Claudius isn't stopped, what's he going to do? More evil. What's Hamlet's point? The evil must be stopped. That's not revenge. That is protecting Denmark. That is what a king should do. A king's purpose, old idea of kingship, the king's purpose is first and foremost, queen's purpose too, if the queen is the sovereign, is protection of the country. What's the number one job of the president? What does the president swear? Oath of office. To protect and preserve and defend the Constitution of the United States. That's it. It's not to give out goodies. It's not to raise taxes. Protect and defend. Okay? That's what Hamlet is suggesting he's doing. So, Horatio, the king's going to know what you did. I mean, the king knows he's back already, obviously. The king's going to know you sent Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to their deaths. It will be short. That is, yeah, the king's going to find that out very quickly. The interim between now and when the king gets those letters informing him of that, the time is mine. The interim means literally that word, between time. Like time's frozen. And now Hamlet can act. Okay? In a man's life, no more than to say one. That is, a man's life is, that's what's abbreviated there, no more than to say one. It doesn't take any longer to kill a man than to say one. Just, okay? And then Hamlet tells us what? I am sorry that to Laertes I forgot myself. For by the image of my cause I see the portraiture of his. What does Hamlet mean, I forgot myself? Or, what happens if you forget yourself? Amaya? Okay. Partly the indiscretion idea that he was talking about. What else? If you forget, I mean, think of what those two terms literally mean. If you forget yourself, then what are you not? Yourself. What's he just said he was in that scene with Laertes? Not Hamlet. If he was not Hamlet, then what was he? Mad. Crazy. What was he mad or crazy for? What had he literally seconds before just learned? The one he loved, his girlfriend, was dead. I mean, literally seconds before. He tells us how much he loved her. Was he lying? Or did Hamlet really love Ophelia? And when he discovered she was dead, momentarily, he went crazy. An act of passion, a crime of passion, is not treated by the law the same as premeditated murder. Why? Because it is a kind of a temporary insanity. Because the person is overcome by the passions. Hamlet says, I'll court his favors, but sure, the bravery of his grief did put me into a towering passion. Why is the passion towering? See, the passions start down here, in the belly, in the gut. Towering implies it bubbled up and overcame reason. He's saying, I wasn't myself when I was in the grave. Now, Hamlet is what? He's calmed down. The passion has settled down. And he says, I look at Laertes and I see the image of my cause. Why? What's the image of my cause? Hamlet began that little speech. He that hath killed my king, that's his father. Laertes has a dead father too, right? Who caused his father to be dead? Hamlet. And Hamlet's like, the guy's got reason. I'll court his favors. I'll try to make amends, try to get on his good side. Okay? So Osric comes in and says, you've been challenged to a fencing game. It's a match. It's not to the death. It's just for play, for sport. Okay? And the king is betting on you. And the queen is betting on you. Bottom of 1329. Osric and the Lord leave. Okay? And Horatio tells Hamlet, you're going to lose. Like, way to go, I had a way to psych me up for you will lose this wager, my lord. Hamlet, no, I don't think so. Since Laertes went off to France, he says, I've been practicing my fencing. I will win at the odds. That is, I'm going to beat the odds. The odds are 50-1 that I'll win. I'm going to win 30-1, in other words. Okay? But thou wouldst not think how ill all's here about my heart. It's no matter. Hamlet says, something's bothering me around my heart, not his head. In other words, his gut's telling him, don't do it. Horatio, nay, good, my lord, it's but foolery. Such a kind of gain giving as would perhaps trouble a woman. Every smart husband will say what? Anybody know? This is, the school of hard knocks, being married 37 years. Listen to your wife. Happy wife, happy life, kind of a thing. Hamlet's point is, this is the kind of thing that would trouble a woman. But I'm not a woman, I'm a man. And I'm not going to let it bother me. Okay? Horatio, if your mind dislike anything, obey it. Notice Horatio doesn't say, if your gut tells you no, don't. If your mind. Okay? I'll go tell him you're not well. Hamlet, no. No. We defy augury. What is augury? Prophecy, fortune telling, portents, things that make you go, no, I probably shouldn't do that in the future. Okay? We don't pay any attention to that, Hamlet says. Why? There's a special providence in the fall of a sparrow. Jesus tells his disciples, that God knows when a sparrow falls, when a sparrow dies. Are you not worth much more than a sparrow? It's in the whole passage. It's in the Sermon on the Mount where he's talking about take no thought for the morrow. Lay your treasure up in heaven, etc. Not in gold and stuff that rots, and etc., etc. Okay? So, there's a special providence in the fall of a sparrow. God knows, God kind of predestines even when every sparrow will die. If it be now, 'tis not to come. What's the it? Well, the noun phrase that's just been used is the fall of a sparrow. So if the fall of the sparrow be now, it's not going to be tomorrow or the next day or sometime in the future. That's the 'tis not to come. If it be not to come, it will be now. What's the fall of a sparrow a metaphor for? Death. If death be now, it is not to come. If death be not to come, it will be now. If it be not now, yet it will come. Why? Because everyone dies. The readiness is all. And your gloss tells you the all is just all that matters. That's one meaning. It's also, though, the readiness is everything. What's Hamlet's point? You have to be ready to die when? This moment. Not 5 years from now, not when I get my retirement account set up, not when I have all my affairs settled for my kids and such. Now. Hamlet is saying you have to be ready to die each and every moment of each and every day. Were Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, quote unquote, ready? Probably not. Because they thought they were working for the king. Was Polonius ready? No. Was Hamlet Sr. ready? No. That's why he's in purgatory, because he didn't get to say confession. he didn't get last rites. Polonius didn't get last rites. Okay? So what does it mean? It means not being burdened down with sin. So how do you unburden yourself? Continual prayer and forgiveness and that kind of stuff? Just hold on to that idea for a moment. So, Hamlet says, since no man of aught he leaves knows, what is it to leave betimes? That is, since no man knows anything of when he leaves, it doesn't matter when you leave. Big caveat, if you're prepared. By the way, it's what I think the entire Harry Potter series is entirely about. How to die well. That is, to be prepared to die every moment. So, everybody comes in. They're going to have the fencing match or game. And the king says, Hamlet, come. Take this hand from me. And the king puts Hamlet's hand in Laertes' hand. Symbolic of peace. No hard feelings. But Hamlet takes that one step farther. Give me your pardon, sir. I have done you wrong. What does that mean? Is Hamlet saying, I didn't mean to kill Polonius? Not necessarily. But pardon it as you are a gentleman. What does pardon mean? By God, literally. It's forgiveness. If you pardon someone, you are forgiving them for what they've done. So, pardon it as you are a gentleman. Hamlet is telling us, gentlemen ought to forgive each other if it is asked for. Okay? That's important. This presence, that is everybody here, knows. And you must needs have heard how I am punished with the sword distraction. That is, my mind is preoccupied. I've not been quite myself lately. What I have done, that might your nature, honor, and exception roughly awake, I here proclaim, was madness. What does the I have done refer to? I think it's two things. Possibly. Maybe three. What's one of them at least? Polonius' death. Surely you've heard, I killed your father. Okay? That was madness. Go back to the scene. What were Hamlet's first words after a rat? Is it the king? He did not intend to kill Polonius. If Hamlet had known Polonius was behind the arras, speculation, would he have killed him? I don't think so. I think he knew Polonius was a busybody. Might he have smacked him with the sword? Probably. Stabbed him in the arm? Probably. Go away. Get to your own house, kind of a thing. So, that's one possibility. What's the other possibility? How else could Hamlet have roughly awakened his nature, honor, and exception? The scene in the grave, where he challenged challenged Laertes' love for his sister. I think Hamlet is partially saying, yeah, okay, I wasn't quite in my right mind there. Sorry. What's the third possibility? And it's between Polonius' death and in the grave. What does Polonius' death lead to? Ophelia's death. I think Hamlet is feeling responsible for Ophelia's death. I could be wrong. The play doesn't stipulate. The play doesn't set it out clearly. Okay? So, he says, wasn't Hamlet wronged Laertes? Never Hamlet. If Hamlet from himself be taken away, and when he's not himself does wrong Laertes, then Hamlet does it not. what did Hamlet say on line 76, page 1327 of Act 5, Scene 2? To Laertes, I forgot myself. It was not Hamlet. And I think, so when Hamlet uses this insanity plea, I think Hamlet is telling us, I was what? I was out of my mind. Who did he just find out had died? Ophelia. He was out of his mind in grief. Have you ever known someone who's been out of their mind in grief? What do they sometimes say? Or angry? Things they don't mean. I mean, things they literally don't mean. It's just everything coming out all at once. So, Hamlet says, if Hamlet from himself be taken away, and when he's not himself does wrong Laertes, then Hamlet does it not. Hamlet denies it. Well, who does it then? Hamlet's madness. If it be so, that is, Laertes, if you accept my line of reasoning, then what? I am as wronged as you are. Okay? In this audience, let my disclaiming from a purposed evil free me so far in your most generous thoughts. That is, I never intended to kill your father. Laertes, I am satisfied in nature, by my blood. Okay, you didn't mean to kill my father. But what must still be answered? Honor. Remember Hamlet's talk about honor when he met the captain of young Fortinbras of Norway? And he says, when honor is at the stake, you got to do what? You got to be willing to fight everything. Okay? So, he says, I'll receive your offer, love like love, and will not wrong it. So they get ready to battle. The king sets out a couple of glasses of wine, and they start. Hamlet gets a hit. In fencing, it takes 3 hits to win. Okay? The hits have got to be to the main part of the body. You can't slap with the side of the foil. It's got to be in point. Hamlet gets a hit. And the king says, well done, Hamlet. Have a drink. Here, let me put this onion here. It's not an onion. It means like a jewel, like a pearl. But here it's the poison. Okay? Hamlet, have a sip. Hamlet's like, I'm not thirsty yet. Hamlet gets another hit. Okay? Laertes confesses it. Queen says Hamlet's not going to win. Queen says, I'm thirsty. King tells her not to drink. She drinks. King tells us, the audience, through an aside, that's the poisoned cup. Okay? Laertes. And yet 'tis almost against my conscience. Line 268 or so. Almost. Why? Because Hamlet has, in a sense, absolved himself of the crime against Laertes. So, Hamlet says, come for the third, Laertes. You but dally. That is, you're not really trying. And so they scuffle. Laertes stabs Hamlet. And notice, his fence is unbaited. The rubber tip is off. So Hamlet is stabbed and now bleeds with the poison. They scuffle, they drop their fences. Hamlet picks up Laertes's, stabs him. He now bleeds. Horatio says they both bleed. And we see the queen swoon. And Laertes says to Osric, how is it, Laertes? Why is a good woodcock to mine own spring, Osric? We've already heard that phrase at least once and I think twice about a woodcock in springs. I am justly killed with mine own treachery. Or we could use Hamlet's phrase to describe Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, hoist with their own petards. The conspiracy that he got into with the king against Hamlet has undone himself. How does the queen? The king, she faints to see you bleed. And she says, no, I'm poisoned. Hamlet, oh villainy, treachery, seek it out. So he commands the doors to be locked. Laertes falls and says, here's the treachery, Hamlet. I'm poisoned. You're poisoned. The queen is poisoned. And the king is responsible for all of it. So he says, Laertes' last words, it is a poison tempered by himself, line 300. Yeah, we're not going to finish. Exchange forgiveness with, we'll stop there. We're going to pick up with exchange forgiveness with me. For Wednesday, read the beginning stuff on poetry. Okay? Quiz, I believe, due tonight. I will put up the drama quiz probably today that covers all the drama that we've done. Okay, so Sophocles through Shakespeare. That probably won't be due for a week. Give you plenty of time to study notes, look at previous quizzes, things like that.